And so what I figured, I started doing it in my Devos. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's kind of cool. But I think it's going to really settle into my heart and my mind and hopefully help some other people if we can kind of go through Timothy together and kind of work through it. It's a big deal. Timothy was written to Christians who, sorry. Timothy was written by Paul to his protege Timothy, who he had left in Ephesus to deal with a bunch of false teachers and kind of take care of that big, really important church. And he wasn't a young man. He was probably in his 30s kind of thing. He knew the Bible. He was a good Christian. He'd been trained under Paul for a long time, but it was a rough job. And so he's been given this encouragement. It was written to Timothy, but meant to be read publicly. Sort of like, Timothy, here's what I'm going to say, and here's all the stuff. And so when you read this publicly, they'll know that this came from Paul, and it's addressed to you, so it'll help you out. And so that's why it's framed to a person, but also universally applicable to all churches. It covers a lot of ground, but one of the big sort of overarching topics is the protection of the church from those who are trying to corrupt it from the inside, whether it be through purposeful means or whether because it's people that are doing stuff that's just dumb, or whether it's because, the enemy himself is trying to knock things down. But it's how to protect the church, how to make sure the church is taken care of, and which is not a building, right? Dude, people often do have the dumb. So the nice thing about Timothy is that it is very easy to understand and very straightforward. But remember, the church isn't a building, the church is a people. Therefore, a lot of this stuff is very applicable to online ministry, digital communities, even to Christian communities who are online or digital communities, not led by pastors, not led by missionaries, not led by official people. I think there's some applicable stuff in there, especially considering this is written to a young leader, a young organizer, a young community leader, and it's got some really good points in it. There's stuff that we can learn. It's going to be some of it's going to be real churchy, but at the same time, I think we can apply it to our lives in a more reasonable, only for elders type way, and we're going to be able to see a lot of other stuff. And so the reason partly that I wanted to jump into this was because of an issue that I'd been seeing in Twitch streamers, specifically in people who were launching online missions. And it was after that meeting in Texas that it really kind of caused me concern. So I'm going to read it, and then we'll talk a little bit about my concern and then take it apart. It says this: as I urged you when I was going to Macedonia, remain at Ephesus so that you may charge certain persons not to teach any different doctrine, nor to devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies, which promote speculations rather than the stewardship from God that is by faith. The aim of our charge is love that issues from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. Certain persons, by swerving from these, have wandered away into vain discussion, desiring to be teachers of the law without understanding either what they are saying or the things about which they make confident assurance. Right? Sunshine, do you share your first name, or do you want me to mention your Twitch tag? Oh, you can call me Al, but there's a lot of Als out there, so you can call me XtianNinja. Yeah, I say my name because I usually am giving myself heck, and I give myself heck in my own real name. So yeah, you can call me Al. Al Deschino is my real name. It's all going to be out there. I'm very, very doxable. If you want, if you really want to swat me, you can. It's easy. But yeah, go ahead. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead and say hi to Corey for me, because we got to connect anyway. So why this kind of spurred me on it, maybe you can kind of already know based on what we just read, and that is, don't swat him, send him donut. Yes, actually, sorry, I'm getting distracted, but Ukulele had this. This was like 2 years ago. She introduced me to this thing where you can have a link that people can click on it, and then they can like send you food, right? They'll like send you like, here's a burger or here's something or whatever. They'll send you a takeout, and it'll protect your identity, protect your address, but they can do that for you for fun. And I'm like, that sounds amazing. And so I immediately went and looked it up. And it's only for people in like big cities and stuff. And I'm not in a big city, so meh. Joey Wheeler? I don't know. I don't know who that is. Empress is taking notes. All right, let's go. Do not send me a spinach smoothie. No one has ever been shown love through a spinach smoothie. That's a threat. Although there are some healthy snacks. Yes. It's, well, streaming. We'll come back to it's all very distracting. Welcome to Devos on Twitch, where I just kind of wander around and hopefully get back to it at some point. But yeah, it's once you have it established, there's not a ton of cost, but the upfront cost is a lot. Like I've got lighting, and obviously I've got other things, and I've got the monitors and the computers and the sound equipment and all the rest of that stuff. It's very expensive upfront, but once it's kind of running, it's a lot better unless you're a gaming stream that is really trying to either game intentionally with some of the new stuff, or you're doing those pay to play ones, like the live, what do they call it? Live action? No, live, whatever, the ones that you pay for. And then you kind of keep going, because then there's a bit of a cost. Plus, if things melt down, it's a cost. And then if you start getting into merch and you start getting into websites and content creation and video editing, and then it starts to get more expensive. You know what I mean? But you can do it for cheap. You can do it for cheap. I teach this in the class. You don't need to have the best stuff to be a great content creator. You just need to be. You need to know how to do content creation, and people will look past the jankiness of what you're doing because they connect to you. Hey, Xanadu. Yeah, well, the chat command runs through the clock, so for what it's worth. Okay, back to here. So why did this spawn sort of a new series for me? And it basically came down to me recognizing and realizing that there are people all around Twitch who are starting channels, starting Christian ministries, Christian communities, starting Christian Discord communities and whatnot. And for them, they're doing it not necessarily because they're called into ministry or whatever. They're doing it as a reaction to something they're angry at or something they're disappointed with. Like they're mad at the church, they're disappointed in the church, and so therefore they're like, I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to start my own Christian community for those who are hurting and those who are like me. And that's not bad. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So they gather up all these people, and they all connect together, and they all kind of got the similar kind of hurts, similar kind of, like things that are happening, and similar perspectives on the church. And it can go one of two ways. It can either go towards, well, let us figure out how we can heal together so we can go back into right relationship with God's people, with, find reconciliation, find forgiveness, find that bridge into a healthy local relationship context. Or it can become this sort of bitter party where everybody kind of cloisters together and they slam the church, and they slam pastors, they slam denominations, they slam organized religion, they slam traditionalism and all the rest of that stuff. And it's just like the church becomes the enemy. The church becomes, this thing to work against. And I've seen that. And I was talking to some of the people that have reasonably substantial sized streams, or they're coming into stream, or they're starting to launch streams and things like that. They believe, some of them believe that they are pastors, or some of them are acting like pastors, and they are, but they're not. They have set up a church, and they don't recognize that they've decided to appoint themselves to be an elder, whereas they weren't called to be an elder. They weren't equipped to be an elder. Nobody laid hands on them and said, you're an elder. Nobody checks their qualifications. Nobody, they just kind of do it, and they've decided that they're an elder. They've decided they're a pastor. They essentially plant a non-denominational church through their stream, through their Discord, and they don't even notice. Right? I've had that conversation with people where I've said, well, do you lead Bible studies? Yes. Do you meet together regularly? Yes. Do you, share the gospel and try to disciple people? Yes. Do you have fellowship groups? Yes. Are you the one that's holding it all together? Well, yes. Are you the one that holds people accountable? Yes. Do you do leadership development to make sure that your people are kind of organized and taken care of? Yes. I'm like, well, it sounds like you planted a church and you are the pastor of it. And they go, I'm not a pastor. And I'm like, well, how are you not? Right? When they look to you and they look to your organization, they look to your Discord, they look to what you're doing, do they call it their faith community? Do they call it, this is my church? And then yes, they do. So therefore, if they say it's your church, if it walks like a duck, and exactly, then therefore you've appointed yourself their pastor. Are you called to be a pastor? Has God given you that spiritual gift? Has God given you authorization through the laying on of hands from other ministers, from other elders and whatnot? Or did you just, in reaction to traditional organized religion, plant a non-denominational church and are working against, or at least far from, accountability or any kind of other church system? And that revelation, there have been two sides to that. One is the revelation of us like, oh, dang, holy moly, I didn't realize I'd done that. I just was trying to help people. What should I do? And, kind of like, well, you need to find accountability. You need to try to work within some kind of church, multi-church organizational structure, whether it's denominational or whether it's, whatever local, or whether it's your home church or whatever, to find some kind of accountability. You need to work through your own gift and calling, and you need to make sure that you say, okay, well, what am I here for? What am I supposed to be doing? And am I usurping part of the body of Christ simply because I've decided to appoint myself? Like, you really got to process that. Hey, DJ, hope you had a good weekend too. The other side is where they just go, yep, I'm the pastor. That's what I am. I'm the pastor of this Discord, and I'm the pastor of all these people, and they don't need to go to church, and they don't need to have other faith communities, and this is it, and that's what I've decided. And do you have any kind of accountability? Do you have anybody do you have any training? Do you have anybody who has said that you should be a pastor or has affirmed you in your pastorness? Nope, but that's what I've decided I am. That's where when I read this, that's sort of where this heart came from. And so, as much as I appreciate the initiative and the sacrifice and the dedication and all the things that are required for somebody to be able to say, I'm going to start content creation, I'm going to connect to people's hearts, I'm going to be vulnerable with them, I'm going to try to point them towards loving relationships, I'm going to try to make a biblical community, I'm going to start injecting faith and faith conversations into this community so people can find healing and hope, and so I can introduce them to Jesus and we can grow together. As awesome as that is, there is a difference between a sort of an unofficial faith community that's all working together, and a community that's part of the body of Christ, and somebody who's just self-appointing themselves to be an elder, bishop, pastor within the church, excluding from all other things, from all other senses of accountability. If we look at this section of 1 Timothy here, it says, as I urged you when you were going to Macedonia, remain at Ephesus so that you may charge certain persons not to teach any different doctrine. Right? So certain persons are the folks within the church in Ephesus who self-appoint themselves. Yeah, that's how you say that. Who appoint themselves to be teachers or elders or whatever because they want popularity or they want money. Back then, if you were a teacher, they would, it was kind of expected to be compensated, or they wanted to feel smart, or someone told them that they should do it, or whatever reason. And Paul told Timothy to make sure he charges or tells these certain people not to teach any different doctrine. So he's not saying don't teach, and he's not saying don't organize, and he's not saying don't have conversations about the faith and don't utilize your gifts and don't try to bring people together. That's not what he's saying. He's saying when you're doing that, you are just coming up with wild stuff. right? These people are teaching different doctrine. Doctrine basically means the biblical truths about God that are established in His Word, things that we know about God and faith and Jesus and future and the past and salvation and all that stuff. So they teach a different doctrine, and then they devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies. So this thing right here, which basically comes down to myths. So what they would do is they Bible fan fiction is what that is. They look at the Bible and they're like, they have these ideas. Well, if Jesus was this and we know that, well, let's extrapolate from that some ideas, right? Let's kind of, maybe Jesus was thought this, or he said that, or maybe the people in the Old Testament, let's fill in some of the details ourselves, or let's invent new characters, or whatever it is. And so they would read the Bible, and then they'd get really crazy about all the stuff they didn't know, and kind of coming up with stuff. So it really was Bible fan fiction. It was unbiblical stuff that they really concentrated way too much on, and that can be everywhere from, Dan Brown type crazy stuff to, the Mormonism, all the way to just people kind of making up, even like the Jesus Project, or doing those movies, the new ones that are out there kind of on YouTube. Like, all of that injects fiction, or even if it's historically baked fiction, into the scriptures. And people can get really caught up on that stuff. So they're teaching different doctrine. The Chosen, yeah, that one. They're teaching a different doctrines and the stuff that isn't in the Bible, and then they're devoting themselves to all the Bible fan fiction stuff that is kind of out there. And so they're not even teaching the Bible at that point. And endless genealogies, so in other words, there was the kind of a hobby to kind of go through the Bible and go through history and figure out where you are in the path of, are you part of King David's family? Where are you from? And are you from whatever? It's, the idea was that for them, it was really exciting to talk about their heritage and their history, but not as like learning from Abraham and whatnot, but like kind of puffing themselves up. And it was a whole thing. So, which we do too, right? We kind of get caught up in this idea of, this is my denomination, or this is my favorite topic. I only talk about creationism. I only talk about the end times. I only do apologetics. I only talk about church hurt. I only talk about relationships. I only talk about pornography. I only talk about, whatever my favorite thing is. It's just endless conversation about this one topic. And it doesn't teach the Bible. It just concentrates only on that one thing, which promote speculations. And this is the next part. It says, which promote speculations rather than the stewardship from God that is by faith. So in other words, you're sitting there talking about things that are untrue. And the problem is your small group and the people that you're teaching and the people that are in your home and all the folks that you're kind of doing this with, they are going farther and farther and farther from the truth into the realm of speculation, which is not good stewardship of the Word of God, of the relationship with God, of new believers, or of the faith. You're not stewarding it well. That's why God appoints, and this is, that's Ephesians, God appoints apostles and teachers and pastors and evangelists to be the people who are good stewards. This is their job. Steward it well. That's the plan, right? That's what they're saying. Go steward that well, and here are my stewards. This is the apostles, and this is the prophets, and this is the evangelists, and this is the teachers, and this is the pastors. These are my guys. So you guys make sure that you steward it well and equip and train and help and hold accountable the folks who are out there doing, Bible work and doing church work and doing missions work and in their communities. That's your job, steward it well. Well, these guys aren't stewards. That's not what they are. They're just kind of out there doing crazy stuff. Now, that's what's happening in a lot of Christian discords. I see it in my own. I see it in the taco one. If you go to say the controversial section or faith section, sometimes it is a lot of bad doctrine, myths, endless arguments about the same topics, all about speculation that is causing everybody to get hot and bothered, and it has very little to do with equipping people for the work that God has given them to do, or building people up, or encouraging each other, or convicting one another, or challenging one another, or spurring one another on toward love and good deeds. It's not like, it's just all heat, no light, right? In the I'm speaking from my own Discord, but I know that I'm sure that if whatever Discord you're in too probably have that struggle as well. And the leader, and this is where I'm going to get controversial and people are going to get mad at me, is there are people who are Christian content creators on Twitch, on YouTube, and they have communities that they built, and their communities are thriving, but they are not good stewards of the faith or of doctrine or of God's truth. They gather people, and they themselves and the people that are leaderships in their group and people within their structure spend a lot of time endlessly talking about side issues, speculating like crazy, and doing bad doctrine. Especially bad ecclesiology too. Bad, how does the church work? Which is, ecclesiology is just how does the church work? And it's concerning to me. As a pastor, as an elder, as someone who has been doing this for a long time, I know how important it is that we have people who know what they're talking about, know the Bible well, and have been authorized, I keep saying authorized, but have been called by God and confirmed by other elders and teachers to be able to say, yes, this is someone who should be doing this. That we need those guys. We need those guys and ladies who are really good at the Bible and, can teach seminary courses and stuff. Like, we need them. And there are people who aren't that, but they're acting like one. That's what the beginning of this First Timothy is talking about. Keep going. The aim of our charge is love that issues from a pure heart and of a good conscience and sincere faith. This section here, he's talking about his charge, as in his job, right? The job of a good missionary, the job of a good evangelist, job of a good elder apostle. The aim of our charge is, and really, it also is the aim of doing this, the aim of talking to these people, the aim of charging them, is that we want to have love. It comes from love, and that love comes from a pure heart. One of the issues that you have with many of the people who are discussing all these false doctrines and silly speculation stuff, they're often caught in a lot of sin. They are very bitter. They're angry. They are jealous. They have a lot of unforgiveness in their heart. They've got a lot of going on, and that's what drives their ministry. That's what drives their community, is that anger towards, that hatred of, that frustration with, that separating from the church. Because they're like, man, it's so old and it's so useless. It's so rude. It's so abusive. It's so terrible, and you can't trust any of them. I'm the only one you can trust. And so their love isn't issuing from a pure heart. It's issuing from a place of anger, jealousy, envy, bitterness. So and a good conscience. In other words, being clean before God, knowing for sure that you're right with him. It's hard to do that if you have bad doctrine. And sincere faith, sincere or true, as in you actually have real faith, as in it's something that you live out every day. It's not just something you talk about, but you live out every day. One of the other struggles for a lot of content creators, a lot of community leaders within the digital community, is that their faith only exists online, during their streams, during their content, on their YouTube videos, in their tweets, in their whatever. They're super Christians or whatever when they're talking about, when they're on, but when it comes afterwards, their Devo life is nowhere to be seen. They don't have an accountability structure. They don't meet with other people. They don't have their own pastor or elder. They don't have Christian counseling. They aren't in the Word. The only books they read are ones that they're kind of interested in. They have no study structure. And so therefore, their faith, all that stuff, only exists for others to see, which is very much what was happening in Ephesus too. Right? These guys were not sincere in their faith. They had bad consciences. Their love came from a deceptive heart, something they were trying to get. And so they led people away using speculations, using endless genealogies, using myths, and pulling them away from good doctrine. That they would never have said that they were doing that. Right? That's the thing. None of these people that Timothy would walk up to and go, "Hey, dude, stop it." None of them would have thought that they were doing anything wrong, or if they did think that they were doing something wrong, it'd be very, very rare. They would have thought that they were just being super smart, having really good spiritual conversations with people about really great stuff that they're super into, and they would have never admitted to the fact that they were not themselves strong in the faith, not themselves, seeking purity, and they didn't have alternative motives, because they did. Certain persons, which again, same guys, by swerving from these have wandered away into vain discussion. And there we go again. That's that same kind of talk that I was just bringing up, that vain discussion of completely pointless conversations. And believe me, that's kind of Twitch 101. All right. We have a lot of pointless conversations, and that's not bad in its own context, right? But this context is people who are calling themselves teachers and who spend time talking about vanity, pointless, useless, self-reflected, only kind of comes from me discussions. This is like worship music that only has the word I in it and never really talks about God, right? I'm this and I'm that, and you did this for me. That's, is that worship? No, it's just you talking about yourself. Other vain discussion. This is how what I think, and this is what I believe, and this is what I feel, and this is what I would do, and this is what I think Jesus would be like, and this is what that's vain discussion. So they swerve away from purity and sincerity and good conscience into pointless, self-focused discussion. And it ends with desiring to be teachers of the law without understanding either of what they are saying or the things about which they are making confident assurances. Oop. Blah. Help. Bible hard. Please stop. Wow, that really blew up. Right? Desiring to be teachers of the law without understanding. And that's the thing. Oh, golly, did I do it again? I'm gonna highlight this thing, heck or high water. There we go. That's the one. They want to be teachers. They want to be known as confident teachers of the Bible. And so they promote themselves as such. And this is the danger. This is the one that gets people in trouble. It's when you have somebody who is a Christian content creator, who's building a community, and is building it as a reaction to traditional church, reaction to old church or whatever, a reaction to their own church, their local church that they used to go to. And they want to be the teacher now. They want to be the pastor now. They want to be the community leader now. But they don't have understanding of what they're saying because they lack God's illuminating spirit from giving them this because they don't have a good conscience, or they lack training because they haven't done the education. They lack experience because they're too young and they haven't been run through life and they haven't read the Bible nearly enough. So they lack understanding of what they're supposed to be talking about. So they just come up with things that sound right to them and sound right to everybody that's listening to them, and they don't understand what they're saying, but they're making these confident assertions. They're making confident. They're like and that's the worst part. Maybe is that they believe and they pronounce how confident they are in what they're saying, and they can be dead wrong. But because they lack accountability, because there's no one looking over their shoulder, because their entire community is full of yes men and yes women and people that like them and them only, when they make these confident yet wrong assurances, there's no one to correct them. There's no one to correct them, which we need. right? The reason I'm part of a denomination now, and part of the reason I pushed so hard to become official is because I know that me being out on an island and calling myself a missionary and calling myself a pastor, but having no connection to denomination, no connection to a local church, no accountability to another pastor or elder, no, none of that stuff, I would become this, right? Because I have no one looking over my shoulder and no one going, hey, you did it wrong. You said it wrong, right? We looked into what you were doing. What have you been teaching lately kind of thing. I would need that. We all need that, especially teachers. Therefore, end of the Devo is this. I'm so... Okay, what did you clearly say? Some of them don't even know that they're wrong. They're reasoned out an answer. They repeated one they heard somewhere instead of actually studying the Bible. And that's the hard part, right? We believe we're right. We believe our own press. We believe our own feelings. We believe because we've convinced ourselves, right? And then we go Google it and we get confirmation bias from our own Googling because we only Google the answer that we already came up with. And other people believe that, so it must be true. But the end of this is this. I'm very thankful for all of the Christian content creators out there who have the courage to step out, even when their pastor, even when their whatever, their spiritual leader doesn't get it, doesn't understand, doesn't support. So they go and they're like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to talk to people online anyway. I'm going to meet my friends and connect with people online anyway. I'm thankful for that. That's courageous. That's St. Patrick's type stuff, where you're looking at the established church and going, I'm going to go anyway. I know what you said, it was dangerous, and I know you said I shouldn't, and you know you said that they weren't worth it, but I'm going to do it anyway because I believe that these people need Jesus. That's a good thing. The bad part, the downside, the difficulty, the thing I don't want, and I don't think anybody wants, is when you exist in the realm of confident assertions about things you don't know, where you lack accountability, where you place yourself into a spiritual position, an elder position, without actually being called an elder. You shouldn't, right? Does that mean I want to be pastor for the place and I'm going to be bishop of Twitch? No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that everybody who is part of this, you got to recognize it's a spiritual battleground. You got to recognize that as soon as you step up and you start talking about Jesus to people, you're stepping into a battlefield, and therefore you need to be extra protected, extra held accountable, extra prayed for, extra supported, right? The farther you get from pastors and established churches and established all that stuff, the more danger you are, right? You end up being like the James Bond, or end up being, Mission Impossible, where it's just like you're out there, and if you do anything wrong, we deny you exist and you die and nobody knows. And that could easily be you. And I don't want that. What I want for you is long-term, healthy growth of the people that you're reaching, who are then helped to heal so that they can be connected to a good, wonderful, healthy Christian church. Right? That's what I want. And I think that's what Scripture wants. And that's what this is all about. So I guess my invitation then is for you to ask yourself the question, have you self-appointed? Are you confidently making assurances about things you don't know about? Are you sure? Do you do your study? Do you have a pure heart, and do you have a clean conscience? If you look at your community, are you one that is building a community on your own shoulders, from your own reason, of your own yes men, of people who aren't going to question you? Do you have accountability? Can you talk to a pastor, an elder, a bishop, or whatever you want to call it, and have conversations and go, hey, you know what? If I'm wrong, let me know. Or are you avoiding being told that you're wrong? Avoiding anybody who would be an authority of you because you're anti-authority. That's a bad sign. I want you to be healthy. I want you to go long term. I want you to teach everybody the truth, and I want God to be very happy with what you're doing, and you and the Spirit to be vibing as much as you can towards what God wants you to do. That's what I want. But you got to recognize you're in a battleground, and you really do need pastor, elder, teacher, the rest of the body of Christ. I'm happy to help. Contact me if you want to talk. But you've probably also got a local representative, local church, local place that you can go talk to as well.